What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Dom and Pop DC Sports Talk Plus podcast. This week, we are going to be getting into our top 10 NFL quarterback rankings, as well as we're going to get into some Commanders talk a little bit of Sam Howell, and of course, check in on the NBA playoffs to wrap things up. Guys, stay tuned. We're back in 1. What's going on, man? How you doing?
What's up? Another week, another podcast.
Another week, another podcast. Overcoming a little bit of adversity here already to start, but we are off to the races. We're off to the races. Let's get into it. Gonna be a fun week this week. I know we already talked a little bit about, quarterback power rankings and that kind of stuff. Did RG3's list at one point, but we said, you know what? Let's come back. Let's cement it. Let's put pen to paper. Let's rank our top 10 quarterbacks for the week. So I figure let's get right into it. Do you want to go from 10 to 1, or do you want to go from 1 to 10? I think 1 to 10 is probably more fun, but it's your call, Bob.
I was thinking 1 to 10.
1 to 10,
so
all right.
We're of like minds. Even though we might not have been of like minds on the intro, we're of like minds on the quarterback rankings.
There you go. And you know what? That's what matters. You butt heads throughout the week. Wednesday you're doing the offensive install. You're butting heads a little bit. Thursday maybe butting heads, but Sunday morning, 12:50 comes around. Everybody's on the same page. That's what makes a successful program. So,
that's right.
Speaking of successful programs, everybody being on the same page, I'm pretty sure we can do this number one together. Pat Mahomes. Any disagreement there? Easy.
No.
Patrick Mahomes, he's the magician. It's the Michael Jordan of football. This guy's reinventing the way the game is played before our eyes every Sunday. I just feel lucky to be in my football watching prime at the same time he's in his football playing prime. It's just
absolutely.
It's just an honor. Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the NFL. Number 2, Pop, why don't you kick this one off?
2 for me is Joe Burrow. I think he's, different kind of quarterback than Patrick Mahomes, more of that classic pocket quarterback, although he's got some really great mobility. But, just a great player on the rise and has that winning quality to him, I think.
So I love that. I'm going to zag where the world zigs here. Everybody's got Joe Burrow number 2. My number 2, the Dispiatch Pop and Commanders fans, Jalen Hurts is my number 2. And I think
trying to be spicy over there.
I think he fills all the things you talked about. And at the end of the day, I was going back and forth on the 2. Jalen Hurts brings another dimension to his game with his legs, and that Super Bowl performance against Mahomes, where the lights were the brightest, everybody's looking at him. He's got every reason to blow it. That, for me, you contrast that against Burrow's performance in the AFC Championship, which was underwhelming. For me, I got Jalen Hurts at number 2. That's where I'm at there. I think he's a phenomenal quarterback. He's got that winning quality. I love everything about him except for the colors that he wears.
Weren't the Bengals dealing with a lot of injuries in that game?
They were, but Burrow was not. Burrow threw, I think, at least 1, maybe 2 picks that game. Burrow was not himself either. So I got Jalen Hurts there yet. I'm not going to go
but
too
I respect
far.
It.
I'm not going too far for Joe Burrow. I got him at number 3, so we'll get into number 3 next. I think everything you said about Joe Burrow, I think he's sneaky with his legs too. He's definitely the guy that if you've got everybody back in coverage and it's like 3rd and 6, he might get to that sideline and get you that first down. He's got that element to his game as well. And like you said, born winner, just an absolute killer. He's Joe Cool. He's the guy. Who do you have at number 3, Pop?
I've got Hurts at number 3, Jalen Hurts.
All right, there you go.
Look, the thing with me with Hurts is not only his talent, and I thought you had a great point about Super Bowl performance. I mean, under the lights there, but his character. I just love his character, right?
I love that kid.
See him out there. He's all business. He's not about his brand or his logo. He's just all business. He actually got his master's degree recently, right? I mean, in reality, what does he need that for? But it's about his character and wanting to have that accomplishment under his belt, maybe thinking about, life beyond football at some point. I wish he wasn't an Eagle, damn it, because I have so much respect for
Yeah,
that player. I really do.
he makes it harder for me to hate the Eagles, like just a little bit. I still
Not
hate the
not
Eagles, but he
not for
makes it a
me.
little bit harder for me to hate the Eagles because I really like that kid. It reminds me of Ren before Russell Wilson was taken over by aliens. It reminds me of when Russ was really rising out in Seattle. Um, it was just like, wow, this guy's class act, absolute baller, just the whole package. So number 4 for me, and this is personally for me, where we just take the slightest bit of a drop off here, and that's my boy Josh Allen up in Buffalo. I love him. He's a great quarterback. He was my fantasy quarterback last year. I'm looking to repeat that again this year. Um, but overall, we talk about when the lights are the brightest, when the most is on the line. So far, he doesn't have that signature win, and maybe you can blame that on not Squibb kicking it against the Chiefs uh, a couple of years back. But Josh Allen still, just when the lights are the brightest, and I know he was dealing with an elbow injury last year, he's just not quite that guy. So I want to see him change that because I think he's the most talented maybe out of all of them.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna say if you
yeah,
if
I
you
got
look
him at
at
number
just
4.
pure if you look at pure talent, I got Allen at 4 as well. I
Yeah,
think he's probably right there with Pat Mahomes. I mean,
yeah,
there was already that talk of is he going to pass Mahomes? Incredibly talented. He's got the size, he can move, he's got great arm strength. Yeah, I think he's an interesting story, right? To see, is it a bounce? Do we have a bounce back coming, or is this just who he is? Right? He's never gonna, is gonna be very good, but maybe not great or special. We'll see. I mean, the talent's definitely there.
yeah, yeah. I agree. And you talk about what he can do with his legs, and he's a different beast. I mean, the guy runs like a fullback with the speed of a tight end and an elite tight end, and he can throw it out of the stadium. It's scary.
Yeah.
Really talented kid there. Just got to get the mental together, I guess. Number 5 for me, probably my guess would be the same for you. The boy Justin Herbert out in LA. Maybe not the same for you. You might be. I think if you're going where I think you're going, you might be about to outspice the boy, and that would be frustrating. But I got Justin Herbert at number 5. I love that kid, man. He's a stud. I think he'd be the best quarterback in the NFL in a lot of other time periods. I think it's just a shame we've got these aliens right now in the league, but
You think there is any
that
time
kid is
period in
special.
the history of the NFL where you would rank
Sorry, so sorry.
Justin
Let me
Herbert
correct myself.
today
Let me
as the
correct myself.
best quarterback in the NFL?
I think Justin Herbert right now is the Drew Brees of the Manning Brady era. That's about where I place him, which is why I got him at number 5.
Please,
That's where
people,
I have him.
some comments here, please.
He's
I beg
the
of you.
Justin Herbert is the Drew Brees of this era right now. Drew Brees
Can
was
I
never the
can I
guy,
go now?
but
Can I go
he
now?
had flashes. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You're gonna like my number 5.
We could have had Justin Herbert, by the way, but that's another discussion. Go ahead. Give
You're
me your
gonna
number
like my
5.
number 5. This is for you, insider. Lamar Jackson is my number
Oh, you
5.
know what? You're not outspicing me here. That's good. Yeah, that's a good pick. You know what? You get 17 games out of him. I think he
I think
lands
he's going
there.
to
Go
have a
ahead.
big year. I think the contract situation being behind him, they've started getting him weapons, got new offensive coordinator that hopefully he'll utilize his skills better and just build on him as a passer a little bit more and more and more, which is what he needs.
Yep.
I find it hard to take any of these other guys ahead of Lamar, so he's got to make my top 5.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think talent wise, again, this is kind of we're in the Josh Allen conversation. If you look at like what this guy can do in a vacuum, he's unbelievable. It's hard to put him against anybody. And even if you look at the CBS Sports article, they said something about maybe he's not so consistent going downfield, but that electricity is uncoachable. It's just undeniable what he has. Try stopping him in a situation where he needs that next down, and you'll just see how good he is. Can't argue with that, but I will. Number 6 for me, Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence at
All
number
right.
6.
It's getting
I
spicy.
I thought you were going to go Trevor Lawrence at number 5. I know you're a Trevor Lawrence believer too.
I like
I
Trevor.
am a huge, huge Trevor Lawrence believer.
Huge.
Huge. I think if you look at what he did with one season, if you look at the jump he made from his rookie year to last year, you give him another season with Peterson as a head coach, who I think is a great coach. You give him, talk about guys we're happy not to see in Philadelphia anymore. You give him Calvin Ridley, who was an elite wide receiver, and he didn't get hurt. This guy just got suspended for gambling. So if he's in shape, Calvin Ridley is going to be an elite wide receiver. You've got Evan Ingram coming off of a breakout year. You've got Travis Etienne looking like one of the best running backs in football. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to take a seismic jump, a Jalen Hurts-esque jump this year for Trevor
All right.
Lawrence.
All right.
Who do you have at number 6, Pop?
I thought you were going to go break down the Jags offensive line position by
Brandon
position.
Sheriff.
I was
Brandon
waiting.
Sheriff.
I was waiting.
Got
Number
his head
6,
guarded
I got.
still.
You're going to like this one too. I got Aaron Rodgers.
That's my
Aaron
number
Rodgers
7.
still got a lot in the tank there.
I like that.
I think he's going to be extra motivated with the Jets. Obviously, they're loving having him, and you're very high on the Jets in terms of their overall talent. I've kind of got to wait and see, but I still think again another guy that if he wasn't 40 years old, I think almost undoubtedly would be in the top 3 here, right? So,
100%.
I gotta go with Mr. Rodgers.
I'm in
Who's
agreement
your
with you on
6?
there. He's my number 7 as well. Aaron Rodgers is 7 for me. So I'm just going to ping it right back to you to hit
Wait,
me
but
with number 8.
So you were at your 1 is Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen.
Justin Herbert.
5 is Herbert. 6, okay.
6 Trevor Lawrence. 7 Aaron Rodgers. I know math is hard, Pop.
Yeah.
It's tough over here. I'm going to pick it back to you at number 8, so I don't want to end up breaking down the Jets' whole offense. Go ahead. Tell me who your number 8 is, Pop.
So my number 7 is next.
No, number 7. Sorry.
Mr. Matt.
Number 7.
I know. I probably threw you off.
You threw me off with the breakdown.
But I liked everything you said about Trevor Lawrence. I agree with. I thought this would be a hot take. Not hot enough, apparently, for the Dom and Pop show. But I got Trevor Lawrence. I think, again, you're going to be a big step. That's why I've got him ahead of Justin Herbert. I think he's the next thing that's coming. And as a young quarterback, I think we're going to see him rise up, and love Doug Peterson as a coach for him, and that whole team could really take a step forward this year as well. So I got Trevor Lawrence as number 7.
Nice. I agree with that. So here's probably an equally spicy take in the other direction. I got Lamar Jackson at number 8. For me, this is a guy that has always hovered in that 7 to 10 range in terms of where I think he'll land at the end of the season.
MVP
but
1 year?
That 1 to 4, the 1 to 4 range in terms of potential and ability, and he did that 1 year in 2019. He did show that 1 to 4 potential. But since then, it's been inconsistent, and so I can't. Similar to some of the other quarterbacks that are going to come after him, I can't rank him all the way at his talent level. And I understand, a guy like Lawrence ahead of him is probably a little excited. But if you look at last year and the year before, who'd you rather have? It's tough. So I got Lamar at number 8 there. Who you got at 8, Pop?
I got your boy Justin Herbert at 8. He's somebody that I think I just got to see more. We've talked about this before from him, right? I just
watch some Chargers games if you need to see more. It's there.
Yeah, but the conclusion and the results at the end of the day, it's kind of like a lot of close games. They end up losing. We need to see more in terms of winning football from Justin Herbert. For me, I think he looks great. He looks great. I'll give you that. Right? I mean, he looks great, but at the end of the day, it's missing a bit. Looks great as a quarterback. That's what I'm talking about, right? In the pocket, he's smooth. He's got a lot of great ability, but hasn't quite crossed that line for me in terms of it being a consistent winner. I know that's not just the quarterback's thing; it's a team around him, but I need to see a little more
So I like what you said there. You need to see more. Well, I got good news for you. You are going to see more because the boy Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, popping over to LA is going to be his offensive coordinator next year. So you will see more for Justin Herbert there. I'll be here all week. Number 9 for me, if you don't mind, you moving over to number 9. Got the boy Tua Tagovailoa at number 9. This is another guy like Lamar. Could be higher on this list. At one point, was looking top 5 last year, but injuries, man, it's tough. I don't know if we're even going to see him get to complete his career in the way you'd hope he can because he just can't stay healthy, which is disappointing. But number 9 is Tua for me.
Yeah, and I think you hit on it. That's why I didn't put Tua there. In fact, when we got through our list, so he's not going to make my top 10. He was kind of in my honorable mentions, and I was going to mention that if I really felt like he could be healthy, I definitely feel like that's the right spot for him at number 9. But I
Yeah,
just don't feel like we can count on that. And I think a guy that you can count on week after week consistently puts up big numbers every year, probably gets disrespected a little bit. Former Redskin,
see the
Kirk Cousins.
smile. Yep.
I gotta go with Kirk at number 9, mainly for that consistency. I think a guy like Tua is more talented. I think a guy like Kyler Murray, right, who's just slid down the ratings. If we're gonna give Tua that love, we should get Kyler that love. But you just can't do it right now based on the situation with injuries last year, the inconsistency we saw out of Kyler. So both those guys get an honorable mention for me, but I'm going Captain Kirk, number 9.
I like it. And to be for full transparency, I actually had Kirk at 9, and then I realized about halfway through my list I didn't have Tua on there. So I'm gonna put that means my number 10 unfortunately gets bumped, but I do have Kirk Cousins at number 10 for all the reasons you stated there. Who you got at 10, Pop?
You already know who my number 10 is. Take a guess.
Geno
Who do
Smith?
I got at number 10? Geno Smith. Geno Smith is my number 10. Again, I think guys like Tua and Kyler could climb that in that list. Who knows? Maybe one of these rookies has a breakout year. It rarely happens for a rookie.
Yeah.
But I've noticed who we both don't have on this list, Sir Dak Prescott.
No. And you know who I actually had at number 10 before I took Tua?
Who?
I'll give you a hint. It's not Dak Prescott. Take a guess.
Geno Smith?
Daniel Jones.
Deshaun Watson? Daniel
Daniel
Jones.
Jones.
I should have
I
said
see a
Brock Purdy.
No, I'm worried about Brock's injury.
Yeah.
But I do see a step forward for Daniel Jones next year. He'd be in my honorable mentions. That was going to be the other really hot take, but Tua came in and ruined that for everybody. Um,
Yeah, I guess Deshaun would be the other guy that doesn't make the top 10 who, um, I think that you could see a situation where now he's got a year under his belt. Are we going to see more of the old Deshaun again? Another guy that clearly, talent wise, but for all the unfortunate issues with him, was a top 5 guy for sure. So,
yeah,
yeah, great stuff. That was fun.
yep, yeah. I'm ready to be wrong about Deshaun, but I don't believe. But speaking of whether or not we believe, let's pan over to the Commanders. Pop, what do you think?
I think it's great. Let's talk
What do
about
you
our
think?
boys.
Yeah, we will have to get into it here. So it's kind of a more open-ended Commanders segment this week. Not a ton of big headline news for probably the first time in our podcasting career. Honestly, um, there's always been something between the sale and everything else, but the dust is kind of settled. So let's just take some time, have a little group therapy session here. Let's just talk. How do we feel about Eric Bieniemy? We've finally gotten some feedback on how he's going in practice, and how do we feel about the quarterback situation? And maybe let's see if we can predict some breakout stars. I think that might be a fun thing to get into. So, where are you at with all that, Pop?
Your boy feels good. I had him 10-7, right? Go back, watch. Watch
Hot.
uh,
That's a hot.
watch last week's pod. It was a lot of fun. We broke down the schedule. If you haven't seen it yet and you're checking this one out, you got to go check out last week's pod because it was a lot of fun. But I have him 10-7. I think the thing is there's the logical part of this when you look at the odds on how, right? And in his first full year as a starter, you say the probability is there that maybe it doesn't go so well. But I feel optimistic about it. And I feel optimistic about it because I think he's got an OC who, one, is really in control. I think with Turner, there's a whole thing that, the Junkies did this week where they talked about how is it that historically young quarterbacks with defensive minded head coach doesn't go so well. And I think even though we had Turner running the offense, you could tell just by what he was saying each time, Ron was a heavy influence on what was
Yeah.
going on, right? And he'd come in mid-season and want to change everything up and go run heavy all of a sudden and get involved. Now I think he's handed the keys to Miami. In all intents and purposes, the offense does have an offensive head coach because I
Yeah.
think Ron's keeping out of the way, and I don't see him getting in the way. And in fact, the whole tempo of practice and the way what you hear, Miami barking at the players and keeping the pace up. Players are saying they've never practiced at that fast of a pace. He's influencing the way things are running much more so than Ron at this point, which is
Yeah.
pretty wild to see. So I'm optimistic that I do believe in Howe and his talent. There's going to be some rough patches in there and some learning patches, but I think what you're going to see from Howe is he's going to play within himself because that's how the enemy's going to set him up to do. Get the ball to playmakers, right? You start to think about it, with Curtis and Terry and Dotson and AG in the backfield. And if we start to see the tight ends produce again, right? Who are you going to cover? The ball doesn't really have to get downfield that much, right?
Yeah.
Just get it to the playmakers, let them get that yak. One thing that Hal's pretty good at is those slants and those quick hitters. He's very accurate with that. I think you're going to see that part of the game, a little razzle dazzle come back into it. And I think he's going to be successful because we're not going to put too much on his back from the very start. And he can make those special plays with his legs as well. So I'm optimistic about it. I really am.
I like it. I like the optimism. Yeah, I'm excited about the enemy. I think you made a really good note there with the fact that he's kind of taking over almost as a second head coach, and that's a lot of what we're hearing in the media right now is like Enemy's involvement as that assistant head coach. I think a lot of times guys get that title as just kind of like a resume boost or an extra negotiation tactic to get the coordinator you want in there. But it sounds like they're taking it very seriously here. And it sounds like the enemy is really, like you said, for all intents and purposes, the head coach offensively, which is awesome. I mean, I remember when I was playing youth soccer, like I remember we had one coach run the program for a while, and things were kind of moving a certain type of way, and then we had another coach come in and take over and bring a different level of professionalism and expectation and speed to those
Yep,
practices. And I remember like a couple practices in being like, oh man, I better be at home juggling the ball. I better be running in between practices so I'm staying sharp because otherwise I'm
that's a
going to be
great
flat and I'm going
analogy.
to let my
Yeah.
teammates down. And I think that's what we're going to see with the Commanders, I hope. In terms of Howell, at the end of the day, one start, 11 NFL completions. You can look at a lot of the numbers. I know I saw a TikTok about it. If you compare his numbers to Deshaun Watson and to Trevor Lawrence's numbers, two ACC quarterbacks, Howell actually hangs up there pretty well. Funnily enough, he actually has a better percentage on third down than both of them had. And there were a couple other stats that looked really good. But it's hard. You can start cherry picking numbers to make the argument that you want, especially on those formats you want to get your clicks. Um, so it's hard to know with Howell, but breakout star for 2023, non quarterback for me. This is a
Can I say
transition.
something
I think
before
he's
we
going to
get
be John.
into till we
Go
get
ahead.
into that breakout star because we could set that up, break that down a little bit. I think it's also about the quarterback room, right? We didn't bring up
Yeah.
Jacoby Brissett's name, and I feel like there's another really solid option there to go to if things don't work out with Hal. So I mean that's the other thing that's got me feeling good about the whole
Well,
situation.
if nothing else, the off the field report on Jacoby Brissett is one of the most glowing reports you can possibly have. So if nothing else, if Sam Howell is smart, he's going to learn how to act from being around Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett's going to teach him how to lead the guys, how to carry yourself as a franchise quarterback, how to have a career in the NFL for as long as Jacoby Brissett's had a career. But I was about to go to it earlier. I appreciate the Jacoby Brissett amendment there. That's important to bring him up too, because I do think he's an important piece of the whole puzzle here. But breakout stars. We're going to do one offensive and one defensive on each side of the ball here. And for me, my offensive breakout, if you don't mind, I'm going to go first, Pop.
You go
My,
first.
my,
Love it.
my offensive breakout star is going to be Jahan Dotson this year. And I'm not wearing my Ashburn Syndrome shirt. I probably should be wearing my Ashburn Syndrome shirt because I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, or we got a little ahead of ourselves last season with Jahan. Showed great talent, great flashes. But if you look across the NFL and what some of the other rookie wide receivers did, he landed upper middle of the pack, right? But just the plays that he made impact on were such great plays and such important plays. They stuck in the brain. I think you give Eric Bieniemy, that kid, next to Terry McLaurin, who's going to be drawing all of the coverage and all of the game planning. I think you're going to be looking at something reminiscent of what Juju did in Pittsburgh when Antonio Brown was really balling out, and then all of a sudden you saw Juju Smith-Schuster emerge as a star. I think we're going to have something like that with Jahan Dotson this year if Sam Howell can deliver him the ball accordingly. So that's my offensive breakout star. Who do you got, Pop?
I think my breakout star on the offense. I'm really high on this guy, and I think it's the reason that they drafted Chris Rodriguez, right? Is I think it's going to be Antonio Gibson. You think if you go
Nice.
back and you research Eric Bieniemy's comments, Gibson was one of the only players he mentioned by name. And I think they drafted Rodriguez as a backup to Robinson because they feel like they already have their third down back. They already have their guy they want to get into space. I think he's going to be a breakout star. And I think potentially, if he could stay healthy, it's sometimes one of the questions with Antonio. I think he's going to be the guy that really is going to be dynamic at that backfield for this offense. I feel really good about what he's going to bring this season.
Pop, I love that call. That's one of my favorite takes of yours of all time. I love that because if you look at what Jerick McKinnon did last year in Kansas City, that dynamic pass catching back, there was actually, I know JP was saying, hey, they should look to get Jed in here because JD McKissick is obviously, pretty much done. Let's call it what it is with that neck injury. So they should look to get Jerick McKinnon in here. He ended up staying in Kansas City, but you look at with that pickup of Chris Rodriguez to have another power back, they're going to make Antonio Gibson that guy. They're going to let him go be that
Yep,
wide
there's no
receiver that he
question.
was. So I love that take. That was
And
that
those
was a
are those
great
are
call.
comments that Bieniemy made, right? He talked about, hey, he's a
Yeah,
converted wide receiver. So I think honorable mention is a guy like Curtis Samuel, right? Like I think
that too.
that you're going to see those guys that have that opportunity to be dynamic, do a lot of things, and get the ball out of the back. It was so frustrating at times how underutilized both those guys were in Turner's office. Now, I could have had a lot to do with the quarterback, right?
Yeah,
But to me, with our quarterback play, those opportunities to hit those guys quickly on bubble screens or quick slants or whatever, we just didn't take advantage of it. We heard about getting Antonio Gibson in space, but we never saw it. So
yeah.
I expect big things out of Antonio this year, and maybe
Love
Curtis
that.
as well.
Love that call. And I believe it is a contract year for Antonio Gibson too. So
It
the boy's
is.
gonna want to get paid. So
It is.
let's hope it has that Deron Payne effect. Yeah, I think that's all for our Commanders talk offensively. Let's get into the defense here. So who do you think breakout star on the defense spot?
You're going to like this one, but I think there's a lot of talk about Emmanuel Fords, but I think Benjamin St. Just is going to have a breakout season. I
Nothing
think
would make me happier.
he's a great talent. Again, got to stay on the field, got to be available. But the way that jump we saw him take from his rookie year to his second year, I think it's just great potential. He's got the length. I love the kid's demeanor and attitude. When they asked him, I saw an interview with him recently. What's your goal? He said all pro. Right? He didn't say I want to make the Pro Bowl. He said all pro. That's a different level. So I
Yeah,
think that St. Juice is a guy that I think is going to have a breakout year this year, and
I
I think that's only
love
going to
love
help
that.
Forbes all that much more, right? If St. Juice can lock down the other team's best receivers, it lets Forbes freelance a bit more. So, he might have a bit more flash plays, but I think St. Juice is going to have a great season.
if everybody else stays where they were last year on the defense and St. Juice hits all pro level, we're going to be looking at a top 3 defense in the NFL,
Mm,
maybe the best. I love that. I've got Jamin Davis for my defensive
that's a
breakout.
good one.
I think this is the time. I love that kid. I love that kid. That's another kind of
Tough
zig
kid.
where the world zags. Tough kid. You look at his situation in Kentucky. He was kind of not starting for a while. Then he was starting, took over, and was moving positions around. He got moved from the middle to the outside in Kentucky. That's where he showed what he was doing, and that's where he got drafted 19 overall. And then we moved him from the outside back to the middle in Washington. And then you saw the controversy that he went through, all the troubles. And I just think pure talent. The kid he's rangy, he's fast, he can go side to side with incredible quickness, he's instinctive. If we let him just go out there and play like a madman, he should just go out there and play like his hair's on fire. That's what I want to see.
They know
If
how
we
to
let him
use
do
him
that,
now.
he's going to ball. And I think we've seen, like you just said
Right.
perfectly, they know how to use him now.
Yeah.
I think we've seen that. So I think we see 17 games of that. And without Cole Holcomb there, they're going to need that. We see 17 games of that. And I think we're going to be looking at, wow, I'm glad we got this guy in the first round. I hope. I
Yeah,
think
and,
that's
and he's shown
what
he has the character, right? After that first season and everybody wanting to run him out of town. I
Yep.
believe even on this podcast, one of us said, I'm done with him. The other one of us said, it's only been 1 year. Let's give the kid a chance. I don't know who, I
Yep.
won't say who's who.
Hey, you were
But,
right. You were right.
but yeah, I mean, I think that's a great call. I like that. And yeah, same thing. We'd be in great, awesome shape
Yeah.
if that happens. So I like that one.
That we have seen that situation that he was in going into his second year break pretty much everybody that was in that situation in this town. And he is the first guy that hasn't done that in my recent memory. So for that reason, I think sky's the limit for that kid. Let's get in
Absolutely.
our NBA playoff check-in really quick. What do you think? I'm getting all pumped up talking about breakout stars for the Commanders. I'm about ready to put some money in on FanDuel for a Super Bowl. You got me all juiced up over here talking about Benny St. Juice, all pro, Antonio Gibson looking like Jet McKinnon. I love it. But let's talk about the NBA playoffs. Um, After what were some thrilling semifinals, we've seen some great games, but we're sitting here looking at 2-0 on both sides of the bracket. Pretty,
Yeah.
pretty wild there.
Yeah, it is wild. I mean, what a run by Miami, right? To be that eighth seed, and they just seem like the better team in every series they've been in. It's incredible, and I think we're starting to see flaws, and I mean, look, reaching a conference championship is a great accomplishment for all the 4 teams that are there,
Yeah.
right? But I think you're seeing some of those flaws and cracks in the armor of both Boston and LA now, right? Maybe a bit of age creeping in with LeBron in LA and not quite the full roster construction that they need to really contend. And in Boston, the coaching seems to just be on shaky ground. There's just something missing there in terms of the
Yeah.
continuity of that team. They're off to a lead and they give up the lead, and being dropping 2 games at home. Like I actually think if there's one series that's more likely to end up in a sweep, it's probably Miami Boston, because now Miami goes home up 2-0. And I think the Lakers, I definitely could see them picking up at least a game, maybe 2 at home, and making that thing get a lot tighter than it is right now. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing, and we'll have to see how it goes. But certainly early on, it seems like it's headed towards a Denver Miami final.
For sure. And I mean, I agree with you on that. I think Boston just it's almost like what LA did to Golden State is what Miami is doing to Boston. Boston's just getting out toughed. They're just getting bullied at the end of the day. And they don't have I mean, what's Marcus Smart the closest thing they have to a bully on that roster? They don't have bullies.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Butler is just ready to do whatever it takes. I mean, he reminds me of obviously different stature, but it's like his game is like almost Kobe esque in that
Right.
when Kobe wasn't having a good shooting night, he's bringing down 17 rebounds. You know, Jimmy Butler is just that guy. He's just got that quality to him where if he's not bringing down buckets, he's going to be bringing down boards and playing defense.
Yeah.
Great on defense. If he's not if he's draining shots, then give him the ball. Speaking of draining shots, how about Murray out in Denver that fourth quarter against LA? Have you ever seen anything like that, Pop?
Well,
I
and
mean, 23 points.
I think it's the perfect situation with him is that he's just finally really getting his legs back under him, literally since that
Yeah,
injury, and he's peaking at the perfect time for them, right? And
yeah.
it gives him that second superstar on the team. And yeah, I mean, he keeps playing like that. Just I think you could you can hand the championship trophy to
Yeah.
Denver at that point. I think they're going to be extremely difficult to beat.
Yep.
And what a home court advantage they have! They have a true home court advantage between the altitude and that crowd is just bananas.
Well, this would be
And
the first time Denver ever makes it to the
exactly,
championship. So,
yeah,
yeah, it's exciting what's going on out there. I'll come clean. I haven't watched a ton of Jokic until this series because just never. I mean, Denver has just never been super relevant to me.
yeah,
Um, and I'm not a huge NBA guy. I usually tune in for the playoffs, but he just never happened to match up against games that I was like, oh, I got to see that one.
yeah.
But oh my god, that guy's an alien. I know I'm late to the party. I'm a football guy. I said that guy is an alien, and if he can have a support piece in Murray, do what Murray did, and take over when they take him out of the game, oh my god,
Well,
that team's going to be unstoppable.
Jokic is like I always get a little bit miffed when people say, and it's like the legend to talk about Larry Bird, and people say he wasn't a great athlete, right? And that's insane. Like he was a really good athlete.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, he wasn't the fastest guy on the court, couldn't jump the highest, but you watch some of the plays he made, they were incredibly athletic, right? And I think a Jokic is just his size, right? But for a guy that big and that bulky, not only does he play the game the right way, he's got a lot more athleticism than it might appear. Obviously you're not going to compare him to a 6'6" guy, Jimmy Butler, or someone like that. But I think he's just an overall talent, and he's kind of a unicorn.
well,
You
do you know
know,
how much athleticism it requires to have handles and to be able to pass like that and to be able to shoot a three
uh,
when you're 7 feet tall?
yeah,
It
I mean,
just
and
presents
yeah,
itself differently because
that's
he's
why I
so
use the
big.
Bird comparison, right?
Yeah,
Bird was 6'9", and you see some of the things he was doing, some of the plays he would make at the hoop and shooting threes and all those things. Like you can't say this guy wasn't a good athlete. He was a
yep,
hell of an athlete. That wasn't the main thing he dealt with, but being able to pull out down all those rebounds and do all that, and I think for his size, and and I was also a guy that plays complementary basketball. He's just happy to get his teammates involved as it is for his success. He's trying to play winning ball. I mean, on the
yeah,
other side, I think with the Lakers, you are starting to see LeBron sort of tail off a bit. Again, I
yeah,
think the Lakers they've made they're playing really good as a team for the talent that they have. It pains me to see Rui doing what he's doing over there. I mean,
you knew
I
he
don't
was
even want to
going
get
to
into
though.
that. That's a whole
Yeah,
nother podcast.
it's a hooper.
But yeah, it's great. I think in terms of like just getting back with Miami and the Celtics. I mean, you look at the contrast of a Jason Tatum to a Jimmy Butler, right? And you talked about just Butler brings it, whether his shot's falling or not. He brings that maximum effort every game. And I'm
Yeah,
not saying that Tatum doesn't bring the effort, but he seems to be a guy that's less able to work through it if things aren't going his way,
yeah,
right? When he gets hot, he's as good as anybody in the game. But
yeah,
when he isn't, and so I think it's yeah, I mean, be fun to see. I think we'll see how this thing shakes out. I mean, still only two games in.
yeah. I 100% agree. I think LA has a chance because you look at that last game and they give up a 10-0 run to end the third quarter, and then Murray just literally leaves his body and just becomes the second coming of Christ on the court, basically for the fourth quarter. It's how repeatable is that, and especially at home, you wonder if they can get their legs back under them. I think LA can make that series interesting. I think it's over in Boston, which is a
And I
shame
think that the
because
problem
I
with
did
LA
have
is
them picked
they
to
don't
win it
have a
all.
closer. That's the problem right now. In
Well,
LeBron's current situation, they just don't have that closer. But I agree with you. I thought there were moments in both games. The comeback in the first game, it
Yeah,
looked like they were going to pull that off, and they clearly had the momentum, and I thought they were going to pull it off, and they were in control in game two. They were
they
in
were smacking
complete
them the whole
control of
game.
that game.
Yeah,
So I agree with your take that LA could get back in it.
yeah. I think LA steals one in game three, and then the game four is going to determine everything, in my opinion. But
Can I just
you
say
know,
something? I know we got to wrap up. Look at that versatility, right? Boys talking football on a national scale, on a local scale. Then look at that hoop talk. I mean, come on.
I mean, come on, Portnoy, what's good, man? What's going on over here? What's going on over here?
ESPN, we're open.
Buy it on the ground floor.
DM us.
Hey, FanDuel, McAfee just went to ESPN. I know you guys have an opening you're looking for. Buy it on the ground floor here. That's all I'm
Let's
saying.
do this.
That's all I'm
We come
saying.
cheap. We come relatively cheap to start.
Listen, what was it, 120 million McAfee was getting? We'll give you guys a 90% discount on that. 12 mil.
Absolutely.
Tell us where to sign. Uh, yeah, I mean, the brackets are destroyed. I did make it out on top. Boston, the only team left on the board. Everybody else
Yeah,
gone.
you crushed me.
Um, but
Congrats, son.
it's a crazy year, so I don't even feel so great about taking that. But let's wrap this thing up, Pop. What do you say?
Absolutely.
It's been a great pod, guys. Thanks for sticking with us. As always, if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And without further ado, I've been Dom.
This is Pop.
Thanks for another great week, guys.
Love me, baby. Oh.